It's the Democrats' fault. There is zero excuse for them to shut down our government right now.
My constituents know that this has been caused by the Republicans' failure to govern. But my constituents don't care about the finger pointing. They just want us to govern.
People say, why aren't you negotiating with Schumer and Jeffries? Because I quite literally have nothing to negotiate. There's nothing I can pull out of the bill that was a Republican priority.
The Republicans have control of the White House, of the Senate, and of the House. They are in charge. They are accountable.
Well, the finger point of the debate continue over the government shutdown. Let's dig deeper on it by bringing in our panel, former Republican National Committee Communications Director Doug Heye, Tom Bevan, Real Clear Politics co-founder and president, and USA Today White House correspondent Francesca Chambers. I want to start off the panel with a couple of reality checks. First, on this idea of money for health care for illegal aliens. Democrats say it doesn't exist, but let's put up on the screen the clause in their continuing resolution that they wanted to get passed, which eliminates restrictions contained in the big, beautiful bill. It basically restores money for undocumented immigrants paroled into the country or here under TPS, restores full emergency room funding under Medicaid for illegal aliens. And even Ro Khanna admitted last night, yes, there is some money for illegal aliens. Listen here.
The amount of money that actually is going towards people who are undocumented is such a small portion of the Medicaid cuts or the Affordable Care Act, if at all.
And it's such a small portion, but Francesca, it would appear to be, despite Democrats' protestations that it's not, it would be there.
So part of the disagreement here is over the point where you're making about undocumented is that some of these immigrants who came into the country came in and then the Biden administration said that they could stay. So they're legally in the country regardless of how they entered into the lawfully present inside the United States. Regardless, John, the White House thinks at this point that they are winning this messaging war with Democrats right now. They say that they're taking this, day by day. They think that historically the party that has been seen as voting against the resolution is the one that gets blamed for the shutdown. So they're waiting to see what happens here. But if you look at the Washington Post poll that came out today, there's some warning signs for the White House in that. You have a situation where Democrats are saying, independents are saying that they blame the president and the White House and Republicans for this shutdown. And then generally speaking, among a broader electorate, you're seeing that more Americans are blaming Republicans in this particular situation than Democrats.
Does blame really matter at this point?
No, I don't know that it does. I mean, eventually it will. I mean, if we look at shutdowns past, certainly when Republicans were, they took the brunt of one of the previous shutdowns, and it cost them politically. But both sides are existing in their own sort of information bubbles on this, and both sides think they have the upper hand in the politics. And I'm sure their supporters are both in favor of what Republicans are doing and what Democrats are doing. And the question is, what are independents going to do? And how much is that really going to move the needle overall? But I do think Republicans are winning at least this initial messaging war. And we saw, to your point, Democrats said first it's a lie and then said, well, okay, maybe it's true a little bit, but not as true as J.D. Vance is saying.
So, Doug, you've always got a very balanced perspective on things. What do you think should happen here?
Look, I don't think anything of this is dollars and cents. And what's interesting is, we often hear that history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. So let's talk about the rhyme. October 2nd, 2013, I was working in that building behind you, and we were dealing with a shutdown. We were dealing on our second day of a shutdown, just like we are now, over the word fight. And it's because enough Republicans in the House Republican Conference, led on by some Republican senators, said, we need to fight and defund Obamacare. We didn't have a strategy to land a punch, knock down our opponent, win the fight. We just had to show that we wanted to fight. Where are Democrats now? We got to fight. We got to fight Donald Trump. We got to stand up to him. They have, if you look at the interviews today that Hakeem Jeffries did, he has no plan to land a punch, win a round, or win the fight. He says, if we stay around long enough, we're going to win. That's not a strategy. You don't win politically if you don't have a strategy.
Yeah. Hey, the other reality check comes in the form of what President Trump was saying on Truth Social about getting together with his OMB director, Russ Vought, to talk about changing the face of the federal government. He said, I have a meeting today with Russ Vought, he of Project 2025 fame, to determine which of the many Democrat agencies, most of which are a political scam, he recommends to be cut, whether or not those cuts will be temporary or permanent. Remember what Donald Trump said a year ago. I know nothing about Project 2025. I have no idea who's behind it. I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. So I'm wondering, Francesca, did he just learn about Project 2025 in the last year, or did he know about it all along?
And it's also not clear, John, whether or not he was actually sitting there with Russ Vought and going line by line, himself and deciding what is or isn't being cut here. Because, of course, prior to this, the Office of Management and Budget, as well as the Office of Personnel Management, they had sent out messages to these various agencies saying, no, you send us plans for who you think that you should cut, and then we'll approve them. And I will also note that one of the messages that was sent out last weekend told them, oh, by the way, we might also bring people back to have the minimum number required to fulfill the statutory mandate. So it's not clear how many of these, even if they were fired, would be permanent, and how much of this is a strategy to try and get Democrats to the table.
But Tom, this could be much different than shutdowns in the past, where people got furloughed and then, for the most part, they all got brought back. People might get furloughed, then they might get laid off, and they might lose their jobs.
That's right. It could be very different. And I do think that is a concern that Democrats will bring them back to the table and will eventually end this thing, probably sooner rather than later, because the Trump administration, again, feels like they have the upper hand, feels like they're driving the messaging war, and now are going to see this as an opportunity to do further what they were doing during DOGE, but again, under different circumstances and ones that are much more politically favorable to them.
Yeah, we talked to the Interior Secretary, Doug Burgum, about it. Here's what he said.
It is easier to make cuts during a time when the government is shut down. And any one of us that have been in these positions that have worked in the private sector can see the amount of inefficiency in government. And if the Democrats are going to give us this chance, let's make sure we take advantage of that.
It's the last part of what he said there. If the Democrats are going to give us this chance to change the structure of government, let's take advantage of that. Democrats have to be looking at that and saying, oh, my God, what kind of cudgel did we just hand them?
Well, first, I'm pro-Doug. I'm always pro-Doug. But, to Tom's point, I think the longer this goes on, the reality of the Democrats sort of Jedi mind tricking themselves into fight is enough and fight is a strategy will backfire on them. Because if Trump goes through with exactly what he's talking about, Russ Vought is talking about, Doug Burgum has just said in that piece, then essentially they will have enabled, forget the politics, policies that they will howl over. And ultimately, and we've seen this already with New York City, Donald Trump is grabbing Chuck Schumer's fists and he's playing the stop hitting yourself game. You need a strategy to win here, and it's not clear that the Democrats have that. Fight is not an answer. It's not a strategy.
Well, if they lose this fight and Donald Trump restructures the federal government, it'll give the Democrats something to fight about next year. Right?
Well, there's another vote coming up tomorrow night, as we expect. So we'll see what happens.
We'll see if there's any defections.
We'll see if there's any people.
They got three right now from the other side. We'll see if they get more. Stand by. Much more ahead.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.